Hi Rahul, hi Isha. Hi Rohi.
Hello everyone.
We'll just wait for 1 more minute maybe, and then we can give it a start, or maybe we can actually give it a start. Let others join in. I hope you all can see my screen. So let's start with a quick brief of what we have already done. So what we have already done until now. Just a moment. Hello. Yes. Mm, so what we have done already now is that we have looked quickly into data frames. Yes, we have looked quickly into data frames and we are going to look into it later on. I will not be doing data frames right now into in depth, because when we do the data analysis side of things, we are going to look into data frames much more than what we have done here. So list, series, sets, and let's say data frame. These are four things that we are going to look into very extensively. Series is something which we have not explicitly covered, which is okay, because any data structure inherently represents each and every attribute of the data structure inside the series. So that's why it's fine if we have not seen or have not looked into series right now, but that's fine. So we are anyways going to do that when we do the data analysis. Now, what we need to do now is that, hopefully if you can see my IPython notebook, we'll continue with conditional statements first. This is very simple, and then we'll look at a few looping constructs. So looping constructs are not really that important. In many cases it will be simply used to write some small functions when it comes to data science. More frequently what we're going to use is mostly, let's say, the functional programming paradigms, which we will look into at a later stage, and that's going to include, let's say, the lambda functions, or kind of things which is going to eradicate the need of having a loop. So instead of having a loop, we can simply write the statements, the commands, or the execution in a single line, and that execution in a single line is going to do what a loop would have done. Now the difference between a loop and that single liner is as simple as the single liner will be done using a technique called iteration, and that technique is actually borrowed from functional programming language. And because Python supports functional programming, we will have no problems whatsoever doing those things into Python as well. In which case, the advantage which we will get is going to be speed, and we are also going to reduce the effects of, let's say, mutability. So we will actually come to know how easy or how quick it is to write down statements which are easy to understand, rather than loops and rather than a lot of number of statements. So it's not only about the conciseness, it is also about the performance that is going to help. But let's first start with the conditional statements, and then let's look into a few loops. So simply put, conditional statements is where we look into if else. So if, and I am quite sure most of you have already programmed earlier, so you know how an if else statement works. I'm just going to briefly go through a few examples, and we can see what it is going to do in Python. Then we move on to loops. So I just create a variable which is going to be, let's say, I want a list of ages of all of my students. Okay, so what I am going to do, just a moment. Okay, Saranx is trying to join. Give me 1 minute, let me admit him. Yeah, I have admitted him. He is just trying to join in. Just fine, let's continue. I want to create a list of ages of all my students. So I will just write ages, and then I'm going to give ages. So let's say 32, 34, 31, 28, 40, 23, 29, and so on. Okay, so I have a list of all the ages of all my students. So if I just print the list, I can see there are 7 elements as of now. Okay, I can also see this using the len function. So these are some functions that we are going to inherently use, right? So these are the few functions which will come up to practice when we look into a lot of functions, or when we start using a lot of functions, right? So as of now, let's simply imagine we have a list of ages which is like 7 in length, and now I would like to create a small loop through each element and print the age with a comment. Okay, so this is going to require some kind of a looping structure, right? So the most common looping structure in Python that we usually use into let's say data science is going to be the for loops. Okay, the for loops are most commonly used. So instead of going into loops right now, let's look into some other examples right now. So we are just going to say TBD. We will finish if else statement first, and then look into loops. Okay, I'll just simply write the most common loops we use in the industry when it comes to data science or machine learning is for loop. So this is just for info. Yeah, so we will be looking into if else statement. So first of all, let's say, can I check if the length of ages is 7 or not? So this is a very simple question. I'm just trying to check if, let's say, the length of this list age is greater than or equal to 7. Then I print I have data of all my students. If not, and I say it seems I have less data. Okay, so what happens if I execute this? First of all, I get an error. So this should be ages. Okay, now I can clearly see that I checked this condition to be matched with an arithmetic operator to a value. If this condition is matched, I go inside here. If this condition is not matched, I go into else. Now I'll just write a few comments, okay, inline. Okay, so I'm checking for the condition after the keyword if. Okay, so that's the first thing that I'm doing. Secondly, I'll just go to the next line and I'll say, to start the next line of execution, I enter this sign, which is a colon. Okay, there is something that I have, or I may not have told you in the beginning. This is something that we need to take care of when we are going to write conditional statements, especially, or we are going to write loops, or we are going to write functions. This is something known as indentation. So what happens is, let me take an example and you will be able to understand what I'm trying to tell you. So in any other programming language, let's say Java, what do? We write something, then we do a curly braces, then we write some code, and then we are going to end the curly braces. Okay, so let's say this is some kind of a function that we have in Java, and all my code is inside this block. Okay, and how do I refer, or how does the compiler know that I have the data or the code inside the block? Is because of this, the start and the end of the braces, right? Now there is no such programming language like, let's say, the common ones, let's say Java or C or C++, which is going to enforce you to have some kind of formatting in place. Example given, if this piece of code is properly formatted, with indentation, then it is very easy for any developer to read the code and understand what is going on over here. That's not a mandate. Okay, that is really not a mandate when it comes to the other programming language. You may want to indent it, you may not want to indent it. However, in Python, this is a mandate. If you don't do that, your Python code will not work. The reason why this became easy for me is because I am using a Jupyter notebook. Because in the Jupyter notebook, the moment I say if, it's going to expect a condition. So this is the condition here. This is the arithmetic operator here. So this is the operation. I'll just say OP. Okay. And then this is the value. Okay. So this condition is being checked by means of some arithmetic operation by this value. Okay. Now you will be surprised to know that this part here, okay, the part consisting of the operation as well as the value is actually optional. I will take an example of a certain use case where you will come to know that this part is actually optional, but this part is mandatory. So I'll write this as M. Okay, you have to always give the condition or what you want to check. The arithmetic operator and the value which you are trying to compare with may or may not be necessary. Okay, we will look into it. Okay, don't worry. The moment I put a single quote here, sorry, I will actually move this. Okay, so I'll just take just a pen I'll take. So now the moment I put a colon over here, automatically you see I did not do anything. This indentation which has happened here, or maybe after this colon that I've put here, there's an indentation which has happened here, which has created a gap. You see, if starts from the beginning, but print starts from here. So this indentation is actually 4 times spaces. Okay, that's why I'm going to write 4 over here. So if you type 4 times spaces on your keyboard, this is the distance which you are going to reach. Okay, this is automatically done by the Jupyter notebook for me because it is intelligent to know that yes, this person is using Python, and Python by default is not like Java or C or C++. It is going to enforce the indentation of the course or the code. So let me do it for the developer, but it's not so easy, or it is not so friendly when it comes to other uh, programming languages, right? So here it becomes very easy, right? So let me just remove everything. Let me just clear all my drawings. Okay, so in this case it becomes easy, but if you are going to use any other IDE, please remember after you have put this colon over here, you need to go to the next line and give at least 4 spaces or one time tab. Okay, so you have to press tab once or you have to give 4 times spaces, otherwise this piece of code will not get compiled. Python is going to throw an error which is nothing other than an indentation error. Okay, the indentation error will be there. Okay, so let me just clear all my drawings. If anybody has any questions on this is a good time to ask. Good. So I think there are no questions. So I'll simply continue and I'll take a few more examples. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you what this code is doing by means of the comment. So to start the next line of execution, I entered colon, and hence automatically the notebook has kept the indentation in place. In case in case of other IDEs, most probably, okay, most probably, I have not used all the IDs in Python, so I cannot be 100% sure. Most probably this will not be enforced, enforced. Hence always put 4 times space or 1 time tab, else face the wrath of bugs. Okay, so this is what is going to happen if you are not going to do that. Now what I said is also important here. The condition being checked here is length of the list called ages. Okay, I'll say this is always mandatory. You need to have a condition. Okay, that is the reason why it is known as a conditional statement. If you don't have a condition, there is nothing that the statement is going to do. It has no purpose, right? So you need to have a condition. Then we have an operator, in this case that is greater than or equal to, sorry, greater than equal to. This is not always required. We will look at examples. Finally, we have a value which is being cross-checked by the operator with the condition. Okay, this value is also optional. There are cases where we would not need it. Okay, so this is what is for the if part. Now the same applies in the else part as well. So the common structure that goes on is something like this. You have some if, and then you have, sorry, let me just convert the type of the cell. So usual way of writing an if else statement is if, and then you have some kind of, let's say, condition. Okay, and then you have some kind of, let's say, operator, then you have some kind of, let's say, value. Okay, now what I'm going to do, I'm going to put these two into this kind of a bracket because this is optional. Okay, and then I have sorry, some code here. There can be multi-line code as well, another line of code, and so on and so forth, as much as you want to like. Then you can have something which is called else if. Okay, we are going to look at a simple example. We're going to take a variable and we are going to play along with it. So else if comes into picture along with a condition and an operator and a value. So I'll just paste it over here. In this case also the condition is important. The operator and the value are optional. It depends what you're trying to do, in which case you are going to use them or you are not going to use them. So I'll just write it over here. Finally, you can have multiple elif. Okay, you can have multiple elif. So I'll just write multiple if possible. So multiple else if commands are possible, post which finally we are going to have an else, and here we won't have any condition at all because this is the last and final block which is going to be executed. Oh, very good. I knew this. So what do I do? Okay, no problem. Let's see if this fixes the problem. Give me a minute. Sometimes it is very difficult to format. Let's see. Yes. Okay. So the indentation is gone. I'm sorry for that, but at least we see what we're trying to do. But maybe can do that. That's not a problem. Yeah. Let's see if this works. Let's see if this. Yes, it works. So if then there is a condition, then optional is operator and value, then some code. Then you have elif, then some condition, some operator and value, which is optional. Then again you have code. This line is gone. I don't know why. So let me just put it like this. Let's say yes, multiple elif actually possible. Then finally you have an else. So this else means I have executed if whatever was inside may or may not be executed if this condition and operator and value combination works fine. In this case, it worked. I checked the length of edges greater than equal to 7. Length of edges is actually equal to 7. So this condition worked. It using the operator, it was able to match with the value. That's why it went into this block of code. So this is the block where it went. Had it been the case, this condition was false. Let's say if I just convert it back to this, and I execute this, then it goes to the else block. It seems I have less data. So this is the block where finally the code execution will reach, provided all if and elif statements are executed. Okay. So once everything is executed, if the condition here in if does not match, if the condition here in elif does not match, then only finally it goes into elif. Okay, so this is how the usual structure is. So let me just do one thing. Let me just cell view edit. Yeah, move cell up, move cell up. Yes. Okay, so this is the usual way of writing an if-else statement. Okay, so this is how we write an if-else condition. Now we are going to look at some more examples. Let's say, what is today's temperature in Pune? Okay, I'm really sorry to tell you the temperature in Pune is around 33 today already. It's approximately 33. It was more for some point in time. I'll just print and see if it is correct. Yeah. So now check the value of TMP and print appropriate comments. If temp is, let's say, less than or equal to 10, then I print we are freezing almost. Okay. Now I go to the next condition, which is elif. Elif, I need a condition here. So I need some kind of a check here. Temperature is equal to, or maybe temperature is greater than 10 and temperature is less than 30. Less than, yeah, okay, less than 30. Print, it is quite soothing. Should that really be 30? Let's make it 25. Okay, so then finally else print best of luck. Okay, so that's what we are going to print. So if I do that, I can see that it has printed. It is quite soothing, but why is that the case? It should not be doing that. Let me just, if temp is equal to change, what is the value? Should ideally be going here. Let me just use brackets. Yeah, yeah. So this, because there was a multiple condition here, I had to use a bracket. I've never seen this happening with a Jupyter notebook. I'll keep a note of this because usually in any other IDE, this usually works out of the box. But in the Jupyter notebook, it didn't work, which is fine. But at least I have proven my point. I'm checking for the temperature value, the value of the temperature. And then I am looking at a specific print statement. Example given, if the temperature is less than or equal to 10, I print this. Greater than 10, less than 25, I print this. For any other condition, I print this. So because temperature is 33, let's make it 23. Okay. If I make it 23, what is going to happen? Then it is going to say it is quite soothing. So depending on which condition is satisfied by which part of the if, else, if, and else statement, the control of the execution goes into that section, and whatsoever code is written in that section is going to be executed. Right. So this is as simple as it sounds. At this point in time, so this is all you need to know. Everything else is going to be dependent on the use case that we are going to solve. So that's all of the basics that you would need to know right now. If anyone has any questions, please ask.
Bhawmik, is it mandatory to end with else every time?
No, it is not a mandate to end with else. So example given, let's say I have a variable
Just
var.
if you comment else,
Hmm, it will still work. Yes. So
if you
let's
just
say,
comment above else and print,
yeah. So if you are able to see my screen,
I can.
okay. So I'm creating a variable called var, and then I'm saying example of if statement without else. Okay. So what I'll say, if var is less than 10, print it is less than 10. Right. So I executed this code. It did not give any error. Else part, elif part is entirely optional. So this entire thing is entirely optional. Now if I change this value to, let's say, 5 and I execute this, it is going to work, and it is going to work without giving any errors. Any other questions?
Okay, but if you are after if you're using elif, if you're using nested statements, then you have to end with else.
It might be the case. It is going to depend on what you would like to do. Example given that, let's say, nested if else. Although we may or may not need this in the context of, let's say, data science, but I'll just give it a try. If var is equal to 10, no, sorry, if var is less than 10, and then I say if var is greater than 1, then print var. Okay. In nested case, I will not say else. Let's see if that is going to throw me an error. The answer is no. So even if I'm doing a nested if else, that elif and else part is actually optional.
Okay, I mean that helps. And Bhavik, just a quick question. I think so. When you are providing numbers in a field in a variable, so you are separating them by comma, right? Let's say in a like ABC equals to 1, 10, any number,
Yeah.
right? If what if you separate by the by colon or other fields, will it still take
We'll
the
have to use a
values?
function. We have not gone into functions. That's why I have not looked into that. But just so you mention, I'll actually share this info with the rest. Just for one of the cases which you have mentioned here. Example given: if I have three variables to declare A, B, and C, I can also declare them like this. Okay, so this piece of code is going to work. A is equal to 10 now, B is equal to 20, and C is equal to 30. But your question now is, let's say I have D, E, and F, and my values entered are, let's say, 40 semicolon 50 semicolon 60. Is this going to work? The answer is no, because when I execute it, it did not find the comma, and hence it is going to give me an error, right? So what I need to do is that I have to use a function over here by means of split, and I have to give this, and then it should be able to work. So I have to do some
Oh,
kind
okay.
of tweaking here.
So by default it is comma.
Yes.
By default it's comma. Otherwise you have to mention the split.
Yes, yes. So at this point in time, maybe it is not really working. I'll have to check why this is not working. Maybe because I need to use double quotes.
No issues. No issues.
I think I need to use the double quotes. Yes. So in this case, D becomes 40, E becomes 50, and F becomes 60. But this split is actually a function. We have not gone in there. So that's why I have not explained it yet.
Okay. And the type will still be int, right? For this
In this
D, E, and
case,
F.
this int, you have to convert this. So I have not really converted this because
Okay.
I've used the quotes. It's, oh, sorry, because I've used the quotes, it will be taken as string. But can
Okay.
I
Okay.
convert this?
Got it,
Maybe
Bhavik.
not. So what I can do is I can instead use it here, right? So I can, rather than writing D, I can say int of D, int of E, and int of F. So in this case, I'm going to store them as integers. Yeah, I'll just insert
Got it.
cell above.
Thanks.
Okay. Anyone else has any questions? Because that's all we need to see in case of the conditional statements. Everything else is based on your practice as much as you do. But I would like to suggest, don't make it too complicated. You don't need to be an expert when it comes to if-else statements. And hardly there will be situations where you will need a very, very difficult kind of if-else statements, unless you are doing a complete journey of, let's say, data analysis only using Python, which is seldom the case when you actually go to the industry, because in industry you usually have your data in some kind of a database. So the profiling or the analysis, or at least the initial prep of the data, is always done in the database, and then what you get as part of your, let's say, analysis as part of the Jupyter notebook or any other Python code that you are going to run is something which is already extracted out of the DB. Example given, if I have a list of all the customers inside, and I need to do some kind of a data analysis on top of that. So all those customers and their details and their data, that's already stored in some kind of a DB. This meeting will end in 10 minutes. Okay, they have imposed the limit. Fine. Fine. I think we have only 10 minutes left. Maybe we can do just a Q&A and then we can close. Okay. So yeah. So what I was saying is that uh, in case of an employee list, or the records of all the employees in your company, it will almost always be inside a database. Seldom you will find the case where you are still using flat files or something like that, right? So uh, in that case, when you're going to extract the data, or the situations which you can imagine having nested if else statements is already taken care of using SQL statements, and by means of which you will ultimately be having a pipeline. I'll just quickly draw this before we are thrown out. So you will essentially be having, let's say, a pipeline where you are going to have some kind of SQL statements. We are going to cover SQL as well, by the way, which is going to result into some kind of a data. This data may not be prepared entirely. This is just the initial extract, you can say, post which you are going to have the Python code. So here comes the Python code where you are actually going to do, let's say, the statistical analysis of the data. This statistical analysis can also be done in the SQL part as well. SQL also has the capability, but SQL's improvement is less as opposed to Python's or R's improvement. That is the reason why we have chosen this language, right? Because it has a lot of libraries which can do inherent statistical analysis. The right example given at this point in time, there may well be a case that only to find how much one variable is related to another, you may need to write a function in SQL. Okay, or you may need to write a procedure. In case of Python, it is just a one-liner. So you don't need to write anything. Things of those sort are already written over here. Okay. Now, after you have done this data analysis is completed, maybe you are going to do some kind of, let's say, machine learning, because as I've already informed in the first class, 80% of your problems will be solved here only. If you have a good question, if you have framed your question properly, if you know the in and out of your question, 80% gets solved over here. Also, this is not only about solving, I'll just say that as S, this is also about T. T is known as time. 80% of your time is going to be spent over here. Okay, so the entire life cycle can be divided into two parts, 80-20. So 20 in this case, you will have, let's say, the visualization part as well. So visualization, machine learning, and let's say you can also include presentation to your clients. So this part will also have some time associated with it, as of course you will need some time to do this, but to prepare this you will need only 20%. So let's say if you have 10 days, 8 days will go over here only, 2 days will go in this, right? So that is the reason why it's just a small example or intuition. If else is not going to be that much used, but yes, there can be cases where they are used. We can't be sure. We don't know that yet. We have not seen the question that we are going to solve. So it entirely depends on the question that we are going to solve is what is going to determine how much if else statement we'll need to write. But usually it is not the case that we need to write a lot of if else statements, right? I think we will be thrown out. So let's close the call. But before we close the call, let's go around the table if anyone has any questions.
Hello, Bhumik. I have a question, but it's related to the last class.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, in the last class, you solved a query of determining a unique set. What it was? Yeah, yeah. I need to know the cases where weekly sales greater than 40K, and I
Hmm.
want to know the distinct unique store ID.
Hmm.
So, can you explain this command again?
Okay. So what I am doing is I'm just
Yeah, it
taking
is
an example.
198 line.
Hmm?
Oh, just a minute. No, I was explaining I was telling the line code of this Jupyter notebook. It was 198 in the earlier.
198, right? No, that line number is going to change. So I got your point. So you want to know the store where sales is more than or equal to 40K, and you want to know the
Yes.
count, right? So this is
Yeah.
what we have done here. Maybe something else as well we have done earlier. No, I don't think we have not done earlier. So let's take this example. I'll just quickly explain you before we are thrown out. Just have 2 minutes or 4 minutes. Can I explain? Yes, I can. Okay, so what is happening over here is this is the data frame. Inside the call to the data frame, I have the condition. So condition is data frame dot feature, data frame dot feature, or data frame dot column by means of some operator is being checked against a value. If this is correct, if this condition matches for even a single row, that row will be shown as true. Everything else will be shown as false. When I pass that inside the data frame, it is going to take the true value and it is going to show me the results of this data frame where all the observations or rows matches this condition that I've given. Now that is going to result. So this part is going to result into the entire data frame. I do not need the entire data frame. You asked me, I just need to know the store ID and the count or the number of times it is actually appearing in the data, right? So I take the entire data frame, I do a slicing. So this is a way I can slice the data frame using the name of the column. So this is the name of the feature. I have done the slicing. Then I need to know the count. How am I going to do that? I can use a dot and a function called value counts. Okay, so what this is going to do is that per object, it is going to give me the count. So you can simply consider this output analogous to a database query, select employee name and count star from EMP group by employee name, right? So this is just the idea of the store, and then you have the number of times the store appears. So as simple as it sounds, we have a data frame inside which I have called a function or a condition, I'm sorry. So a condition is getting executed within the data frame, returning a list of all rows. Then I'm selecting a particular feature, and then I am using a particular method or a function. In some cases, in some websites, you will find this called as a method as well. So this is how it is actually structured. You can even break this down into 3 to 4 statements as well, just to make it clear that we can use concise statements into Python. I've not actually done that, but this single line can actually be broken down into 5 lines if you want. Did that answer your question?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Okay, I think we have only 2 minutes left. Any other questions? I thought because of COVID-19 they have increased the time, but they have not. It's fine. No, I don't
So
think that.
Bhawmik, it is 30 minutes free and then it is paid.
It is actually 40 minutes free. So it started at what, 8:34, I think. So it is free until 9:14,
Oh, okay.
and then we will
Okay.
automatically be thrown out.
Okay. Okay.
Which is fine. 40 minutes, I
But
believe,
I
is
think
also
the
fine.
speed is today the speed was quite good
Yeah.
in terms of GoToWebinar and other
Yeah. Yes.
tools. The speed was pretty good
Yes.
today.
Something was problematic yesterday. Okay. If there are no other questions, let's close. We will meet again at the same time tomorrow.
Yep.
Okay. Thanks all. See you
Yeah.
tomorrow.
Thanks.
Thanks, Bhawmik. Thanks all. Bye
Good
bye.
night.
Thanks for Mick.